And welcome to another episode of Pit Lane Parlay. My name is host Mike Jokum. With me I have guest host and comedian Jess Baker, and joining the show for the second time from the lovely state of Minnesota is Matt Hickey. Guys, how's it going?
Woo woo party!
Good. Second time, but I have to follow Joseph and Joe, and they were two phenomenal guests, so hopefully I can get to their level.
I think,
Should I ask the cheese question?
Jess, you read my mind. I wanted to start with that and not let Matt prepare at all. So, Jess, I'll let you ask the question.
You know the question. You are handed a 400-pound block of cheddar cheese. What are you going to do with it?
Somehow, some way, I'm going to get it to Road America. I'm camping with Sammy, my buddy David, and his fiancée Michelle, and we are going to melt it down, do something with it, and then maybe get Joseph to sign 50 pounds of it, and then we can bring it home and frame it or do something.
Freeze it.
Freeze it. So, I don't know. That's what I would do. I'm not a big cheese guy, but I'd do something with it, share it with everybody in the campsite or do something.
I would love to figure out how you're going to make 400 pounds of cheese travel during the summer weather. Could be a mess.
You're thinking too far ahead. We're just going to wing it.
In one of the hills in Road America, you could make like a cheese water slide sort of thing and go slip and slide and go sliding down cheese.
Hey, Lake O'Cheese at the end.
Yeah, Lake O'Cheese. There we go. I think that sounds like a fantastic idea. But anyway, now that we've gotten our patented question out of the way with, thank you everybody again for joining. The Cheese Party t-shirts will be posted on our Twitter after the show at some point tonight and be available for sale right after that, and you can find all the information on that on our Twitter at Pit Lane Parlay. Where to start? Let's start with the Phoenix test, since it's kind of the most recent news, and a lot went on. There was 6,000 total laps run. Did either of you guys have the chance to tune in for a little bit?
I did not. I was busy, but I did look at the times and such, here and there, so that was nice to see. Unfortunately, I didn't get to watch any of it.
Yeah, I caught highlights on Twitter, and then I had it on at work, trying to see just how good-looking the new cars were, paying attention to Scott Dixon's windscreen test, and then just seeing how times were shaking out between, new teams, new driver combinations, and it was a lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah, I think you started with a great point in how nice just about every single car looks in their new livery this year. Really, no offense to him, but the only one I don't really love is Zach Veach. And it's still light years better than a white and blue scheme that we saw 17 of last year with a lot of cars. So I think I have a tie between Spencer Pigot and Bourdais for the best looking car. But what about you guys? Which one stood out to you the most?
Those are two good ones. My man Stephen King was out there photographing not only that test, but the one in Sonoma as well, and he got some phenomenal shots sent to me, and they look phenomenal. And the Spencer Pigot one is a good front runner for one of my favorites so far. The simplicity, though, of Ed Jones is just the two contrasting blues. I really like that one as well.
There's one that I don't particularly care for, and that's Scott Dixon's PNC car. Really glad to have PNC here, but I think they could have done more with it. But, God, they're all so pretty.
Even the Penske cars, which are pretty much the same livery as last year, just look better on the new car.
Yeah, they do. They just look, well, for lack of a better word, they just look sexier.
Yeah, I think that's a great choice. And Dixon's PNC car, I didn't like it at first when it was revealed on last Tuesday, but it kind of grew on me throughout the week. I think it looks pretty cool. The windscreen itself, I didn't really look to see any lap times if there was really any difference, or I saw Dixon was pretty happy with the test, but I thought the windscreen on the car itself looked fantastic and didn't really look out of place.
Yeah, it looked like it fit in really well. And then, Dixon had a lot of praise for, especially since it was just the first trial run for it. I mean, some things he said was, we have to work on the conditions when it's dusky out, and then we have to work on the fact that we have no airflow in the cockpit, so it gets really hot. But Jay Frye said, if those are the only two critiques so far, we're doing something really right. So that was, and if you have any guy in the field who you want to trust their opinion, it's Scott Dixon. So far, so good.
I was definitely excited with the way that it looked because I was a little worried about it. I think that there's a couple things that they could do that would make it slightly more safe. And I think I don't know if they would be able to do it and still keep it the same, so I don't know, but I think the sides need to be slightly higher than they are because they dip down pretty low, and if a car got sideways and something was coming at them, it could still hit them in the head area, and I know that's what they're kind of trying to avoid. So I don't know, but I think it looks much better than I had originally thought it would, and I definitely think that it's gonna improve the overall safety for the drivers.
Yeah, for sure. And just a quick recap, I'm not going to go through all 23 guys who raced, but the Rahal guys, both Graham Rahal himself and Takuma Sato had outstanding weekends. First and fifth overall, Takuma with an outstanding fast lap, just under 190 miles an hour. I was curious to see that both of the Schmidt-Peterson guys were pretty far down the list, but then again, we don't really know if they were testing race conditions or what exactly they were testing. Maybe they were just taking it easy, so it's kind of tough to read too much into the lap times and speeds and total laps run. But nonetheless, Tony Kanaan in third with AJ Foyt I don't think we saw an AJ Foyt car up that high in any sort of practice last year, so definitely hopefully a step in the right direction to them being competitive again.
Who was my 500 winner pick?
Oh gosh, don't start.
Well played. Recapping.
I just had to throw it out there.
Recapping our 500 picks. Actually, yours was the only one. Both Matt and I's are one-off, so I guess we don't need to recap how they did in our test results after I looked at the list here. But I was thoroughly impressed. I didn't get to watch a ton. I watched a decent amount on my on a flight home last week. But Pietro Fittipaldi coming in with pretty much zero IndyCar experience, not lighting up the lap times, but ran a ton of laps and ran consistent and ran pretty fast. Thoroughly impressed with the 19-year-old rookie for Dale Coyne, and as Matt pointed out a couple episodes ago by text message, he is Emerson Fittipaldi's grandson, not nephew or whatever I said. So just correcting my error before we continue on there.
Yeah, Fittipaldi looked really good, and you got to limit your expectations a little bit for a guy who's, I don't believe he was on an oval in a NASCAR minor series.
You're right.
Yeah, so he's not, it's not foreign to him, but going at those speeds, it's definitely not something you're used to. And then to comment on Hinch real quick and just the struggles of Schmidt-Peterson, you can look at it and go, it's a test. Were they just trying new things? What was going on? Maybe they were just throwing the kitchen sink at it. But to quote Hinch on Instagram, one of his pictures was regarding the test. He said, "Character building test for us. Days like that actually bond a team and motivate us even more. We will be back and we will be stronger." To me, that seems like, hey, we swung and we missed, and it wasn't like deliberate. We weren't trying something new. We just completely struck out. So to me, it seems like maybe we got an early issue going on at Schmidt as far as maybe the short ovals go, but we'll have to keep our eyes on that one.
Yeah, and props to the Schmidt-Peterson team for their little shop tour video. Acting job's well done by everybody, but it was kind of neat to see the inside of stuff that not everybody gets to see the inside of. So cool little video there that came out. It's on the social medias. Hinch and SPM have retweeted it, a dozen or so times today alone. But Jess, I know you're going to be disappointed to see that my pick for most improved this year, Mr. Marco, did have a very outstanding test weekend.
Yeah.
I know it's very early, but it gives me hope that maybe he's turned things around. He was right there, just a thousandth of a mile an hour off of Graham Rahal in fifth. So overall, great test session. I think as the weekend went on, you saw a lot of guys improve their lap times, and outside of, ironically, Scott Dixon himself just kind of spinning out and causing some minor damage, there were no major incidents all weekend.
Except for Lace Tucker, who had 4 incidents. So
I said major incidents.
Oh, okay.
I was gonna let him go because he didn't actually.
No, never. Damage. Laced. I don't know what the heck he's doing already, but 4 incidents in two days. That's whew. Let's hope.
Okay, but the question about that is I think that people were genuinely shocked by that.
Oh, I have no idea what they're thinking, but
why? I mean, we all know that the reason he has what he has is because he brought money. And, I mean, I'm not knocking him necessarily. I've not really ever watched him race, but... Come on,
throw the shade.
I can't be shocked that he had issues. I mean, we can't expect all the rookies to come out and run like Fittipaldi. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, totally fair. Funny enough, in just his fastest lap alone, Laced did have a faster lap than Fittipaldi, but Laced also did spin or cause 4 minor cautions. So good point there, Matt. Definitely can't ignore that. I was a little concerned, but the Foyt team didn't seem all that worried about it. But compared to what they did last year, it's definitely a step in the right direction, especially with Kanaan doing very well. But moving on from Phoenix, we are at a point already in mid-February where we might have 33 cars for the Indy 500, which is the earliest I can remember, in a long time, in 7 or 8 or 9 years at least. Do you think that means there is definitely going to be bumping this year? And I think I'll make that the Twitter question of the week. Will there be a 34th and 35th potential entry in the 500?
I'll take the negative. I'll say no. I think the demand is there, but the supply is not, if we're talking simple economics, and then that is strictly speaking an engine issue. It's not a Firestone issue. It's not a Dallara issue. I don't even think it's a financial issue. I think Chevy and Honda are stretched so thin as it is that they just don't have enough engines to go over 33, which is a huge bummer because what's the team that we just saw come out this week out of nowhere saying they were going to do a team?
Tom Burns Racing?
There it is, Tom Burns Racing. Yeah, well, they fielded Dominic Dobson way back when, and then they most recently worked with Buddy Lazier really closely. And a couple people were wondering if this was in conjunction with Lazier. They came out straight and said they had nothing to do with Lazier, and they wish him the best of luck. So I don't know if Lazier's racing this year or not, if Tom Burns is going to pull a rabbit out of his hat. But anyways, I don't think we'll see bumping, which is kind of a bummer because it does seem like we have genuine interest for teams, and teams could, Ganassi theoretically could add a third car if the budget came together, but again, it's just the lack of engines.
Before I get to something I read that was posted by Robin Miller an hour ago, I'll let Jess go in with her input.
I would say, I wouldn't say no for sure, but I would say probably only one car. And again, just like he just said, it's an engine manufacturer problem, and especially now with more interest from sponsors. It used to be a money problem. It was just too expensive to run the month of May for the one-off teams, but I don't know. I mean, I hope we have at least one person get bumped, and I would be ecstatic if we had 2, but I really could only probably see one more.
All right, well, because I want to disagree with both of you guys, I'm going with there's definitely going to be 35 entries. And for no reason alone other than so one of us can be right in 3+ miles, in 101 days, or 100 days by the time some of you may listen to this tomorrow. But Robin Miller posted about an hour ago as of this recording that Connor Daly might be teaming up with Tom Burns Racing as the 4th Dale Coyne car. I don't know how that's going to work, but Robin Miller says Lazier sponsor Tom Burns could be part of a military-themed entry for Connor Daly. And I also saw Rahal Letterman Lanigan might run a 3rd car. Dreyer and Reinbold has confirmed they will run 2 cars. So, it could definitely be 34. I'm going to guess and say 35 just to mix up the results here. If we had 34, that'd be pretty cool. If we had 35, it'd definitely be awesome.
Yeah, and we had talked at the show that I was a guest in, kind of a field rundown, and there's a couple in there I was just not seeing. I just didn't see Danica going to Carpenter. I'm sure we'll touch on that here later on. Didn't see J.R. Hildebrand coming into the fold, to be honest, especially after last year. And can you picture a more weird team combination than J.R. Hildebrand, who is half engineer, half driver, could have gone to MIT, very, very kind of laid back, but he is opinionated. He just doesn't show it all that often. And then you got the bro and Sage Karam, who will probably never be seen with a shirt on unless he has his fire suit on. And that to me is just kind of a weird combo. But hey, these two guys are really good at ovals, so it could just work for him. So yeah, if I'd be really impressed if those engines came through, but just part of me, I don't know. I'm just kind of like the Debbie Downer of the group, and then hopefully it happens.
You're the glasses half empty guy.
Yeah.
But you bring a good point up about unlikely combinations. Especially dating back a month or so ago when you were on. I would have bet money that Danica was not going to Ed Carpenter and that J.R. Hildebrand probably wouldn't be at Dreyer and Reinbold. But here we are a month later, and both of those things are, one is confirmed and one is seemingly more and more likely. As Robin Miller mentioned, that Dreyer and Reinbold's very, very short list was Hildebrand, Karam, and Oriel Servia, who we probably both can assume will be the 3rd Rahal car if they enter a 3rd car. But I think overall the fact that interest is up not only from a team point but a sponsor point is only going to increase the the number of cars we have. Maybe obviously not this year, but definitely in the coming years. It's a really great thing to see. Rahal announcing another sort of sponsor, what feels like every other day, and Sebastian Bourdais teaming up with Jimmy Vasser to come through with the sponsor and the insanely awesome looking car with the little Dan Gurney tribute there. So definitely on the business side of racing, things are looking up, which I don't think we've been able to say that in quite some time.
Yay! They're looking up.
Yes,
finally.
Positivity. We're gonna. I think that's gonna be.
Seriously though, it's been so hard as a fan the last few years to get overly excited because you were waiting for the other shoe to drop. But this year, it seems like when things get rolling, they actually keep going. So it's been really nice as a fan to see some of the things that have been going on this year.
In J. Frye we trust.
Exactly.
I think that maybe we have our second T-shirt.
In J. Frye we trust. I like it.
But yeah, no, Jess, I think you're 100% right there. The last few years have been a little difficult as a fan to stomach through what's a quiet off season. I know it's been a long off season, going on practically 6 months since the last race. But it really hasn't been a quiet off season. There haven't been too many weeks, especially since we started recording in early December, that we haven't had at least some sort of decently big breaking news to discuss on the show every week. which has been awesome. And I we came in from a week off last week, and there is plenty of news to go around. So definitely a great thing to see.
You just check your Twitter every day, just wondering what's going to come next. I mean, the Tom Burns thing. It'd be remorse not to give a shout out to Connor Daly, my homie. That really, to me, I thought Clayman DeMello was a shoo-in since Fittipaldi got that split ride for Indy. He got the Indy nod, but then Coyne said, hey, we got a forced card, and I figured Clayman DeMello would just use the pay-safe money, his sponsor, to kind of just buy that ride in addition to his part-time schedule. So for the Connor Daly news to come out, I think it's excellent. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it comes through for Connor, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, he can finish well at Indy.
Yeah,
I think he can.
I agree. But some other, just to wrap up this bit before we move on here, other names that Robin Miller has mentioned as looking in some capacity, Michaela Ocean from last year, even Catherine Legg is starting to explore some options again. Jay Howard, I don't really want. We'll leave it at that. I think our noises there have said enough. James Davison, who I would be thrilled to see again. He had a hell of a race in Texas before he crashed, and obviously Connor Daly, who looks maybe like he might be teaming up with Tom Burns and Dale Coyne as that fourth car. So plenty of names, not to mention Oriol Servia and Buddy Lazier, who will probably be back as Buddy Lazier Racing. Hopefully, I know Buddy Lazier's already said they bought some parts, but they're just waiting for some more money to buy the rest of the new Aero kit parts. So we shall see. Any last thoughts on this before we move on?
No, I think we covered it.
We're good.
So, my pitfall 2 weeks ago, if anybody or you guys don't remember, was the whole Fuji WEC race asking to move a date to accommodate Fernando Alonso in his sports car adventures this year, and WEC agreed, and it has caused all sorts of havoc up and down sports cars, where some sports car series have agreed to move dates to make it all work, and IMSA has kind of said, yeah, no, we're not moving our date. For a race which is not causing problems for Fernando Alonso, but is causing problems for other drivers. I'm not going to make it my pitfall this week, but when I ran the Twitter question on what topic should we cover tonight, that was one that was brought up to me. I really don't understand. I get it. Fernando Alonso is probably going to bring in tickets, and listen, the name of the game right now is money, but to screw over, for lack of a better term, all of your full-time teams or some of your full-time teams, I feel casts a bad light on sports car racing, but I'll leave it up to you guys to see what you guys think.
I don't know. It's hard to blame them because, we see what he did for the 500, the massive amount of eyeballs that came to the race just because he was going to be in it. And it's not just about viewership. It's about selling stuff at the track, too. They're going to sell more t-shirts. They're going to sell hats. They're going to sell whatever. And it's hard to blame them for wanting to cash in on the Alonso movement, but at the same time making everyone change everything. It would be different if they were just gonna have to move the one race to a different weekend and it wasn't gonna affect anything else. But having to change everything is a little bit ridiculous. If that were going to be the case, why not just wait until next year? Because I doubt real seriously that his shining star is going to fade any between now and then, especially if he says he's going to run the 500 again next year. People are going to be real interested in him still.
Yeah, and I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, because I don't want to say maturity or immaturity. But I just was hoping better from Alonso to kind of take a step back and go, hey, if they change the date to this race, it's going to not necessarily like screw, but just make the schedules a lot more difficult for so many people in the racing world that, maybe this just isn't the year for it. Maybe I should just wait and figure something else out. Maybe just stick to the 24 hours Le Mans. So I was hoping for better from Alonso, just to kind of step back and go, maybe this just isn't the year for me. But unfortunately, it looks like he's going to go forward with it. So I'm not a huge fan of the whole thing, and I was just hoping for a little bit of better decision making from Alonso.
Yeah, that's a point I did not consider. Well done there, and also well done on IMSA for not changing their date like some of the other WEC series and whatnot. I think overall, I think if I'm going to sum up in one word, it's disappointed. It's just all around disappointing on WEC, and like you said, man, a little disappointing on Alonso. Maybe just not to step back from that one race, but I'm interested to see how he does in sports cars. It'll probably get me to tune into some of the smaller sports car races that I don't normally tune into, but I'm definitely.
And if we thought what's going to happen, they're going to look like such fools if they suffer an engine failure like 30 minutes into the race. I mean, it's going to make them look like such clowns.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and one that will probably at least make me tune in a little bit more. But listen, we won't touch on sports cars too long here. Moving on, I have a question for both of you guys. Listen, we can't go an episode with Matt on that we don't discuss fantasy IndyCar in some aspect, especially as we get close to the season here. I'll start with you, Matt. Your one pick for what do we want to call it? Driver MVP, and yeah, let's just leave it at that. Driver MVP, the guy who is the number one guy that you want to have on your fantasy IndyCar team, no matter what sort of fantasy league you're in.
I don't think you can bet against a guy like Scott Dixon, who's consistently good at just about every track. I mean, there's only a couple of races he hasn't won, as far as venues go. I think St. Pete's one of them. Grand Prix of Indy's one. Might be a couple. Maybe has he won at Iowa? There's only a couple races he hasn't won, but consistently across the board, Dixon is just the man. Not going to try to reveal too many of my successful fantasy IndyCar picking secrets with all those championships I've won. That was sarcasm because I haven't won any. But, if there's one guy you need on your team, and if you're kind of stuck in a bind and just looking to pick a guy just for the sake of picking him, Dixon's the man.
Jess?
I'm going to totally disagree. Not that I don't like Dixon, because obviously the man makes fuel, which I still cannot. I swear he's got it in his water bottle, and he just somehow gets it into the tank as he drives. I haven't figured it all out yet, but it's unreal. But I'm gonna actually go with willpower, because a few years back you would never ever pick him on an oval, because seriously, willpower on an oval. But now he's consistently good. He is always up there fighting for it. Obviously, he's had some bad luck, but I think that overall he's a pretty solid pick.
Oh man,
let's hear it, rookie.
All right. Well, joining Matt's fantasy IndyCar league, I guess I'm under the most pressure now to come up with a good answer here.
He's going to say Marco, isn't he?
I was going to say, you're going to say something laughable,
no.
And we get to make fun of you for it.
No, I wasn't going to go there. I'm going to play this one slightly safer than I normally do in my fantasy IndyCar picks. I'm going to go with Sebastian Bourdais. He started out the year on fire the first couple races and had a blazing lap time in the 500 qualifying before his unfortunate crash and injury. And with teaming back up with Jimmy Vasser, a little bit more experience behind the pit wall there, I think could be a great combination. So I think Bourdais is primed to have a great season.
Do you know who you're picking for St. Pete yet?
I do not have my fantasy picks even remotely thought of outside of, I guess I have to pick Bourdais for the first race since I just mentioned him. And I believe he did win St. Pete last year, if I'm not losing my mind, which is certainly possible. But yeah, I'll go with Bourdais.
If anybody's wondering, for St. Pete, I'm going with Laced, Binder, Kimball, Chilton, and Marco.
Good start.
Liar.
I was gonna let you go on that one and be nice, but
I'm not nice.
Anyway, I'll let we shall see how the fantasy IndyCar season unfolds. I will throw together one of the IndyCar.com public leagues for anybody who listens to the show, and we can talk about it on here, and maybe I'll give away a T-shirt as a prize at the end of the year, or whatever T-shirt design is the most popular as the year goes on.
Cheese party.
Yes, it has to be the cheese party.
Fred, we trust.
Yes, I think, man, that one might have to be designed very soon. And just a reminder, the cheese party T-shirts are finally designed, and will be on Twitter. As soon as you are listening to this, pull up our Twitter at Pit Lane Parlay, and it will be posted, in the media section of Twitter, and also just in the. Well, I'll make it a pinned tweet to make it easy for everybody, so you can't miss it when you go on our Twitter.
We need to all wear them on the same day in May and have like a tweet up or something, just to
Yes.
hang out in a huge crowd of people with the same T-shirt on.
Yes, and there are no limits. If somebody wants to buy 15 T-shirts, please feel free. It would be fantastic. Moving on, we would be remiss if we didn't go an episode with talking about Danica in some way.
My
And
bestie.
Jess's favorite driver of all time, probably. I think we're going to have to get Jess a "In Danica We Trust" T-shirt.
Oh, God.
I know she's biting her tongue really hard right now. But anyway, does anybody really think that Danica's accidental slip-up in the Daytona 500 media day about, I haven't talked to Ed and his people recently, was really accidental?
Absolutely not.
No.
Thank you. I mean, Danica, you couldn't have made it more obvious that it wasn't accidental.
These are all people who have seen her in action for however many years now. Nobody believes that it was an accident.
I mean, even Ed Carpenter did not really take all that much time to come out and say, yeah, she's our third car. Usually, you get a little bit of denial, we're still talking, she's on the list, we don't know yet. And he went, yeah, it's her. I mean, that to me was...
That's vintage Carpenter.
Yeah, that to me was the best part, is Ed Carpenter not even trying to deny it. He just goes, you know what, Danica, come on. But yes, it's her. He's probably saying some other things maybe that he didn't want to announce it yet, but I can't say those, otherwise iTunes won't publish us. But yeah, anyway, I hope, the one thing I hope is that her GoDaddy IndyCar livery will look a little bit more interesting than her extremely bland GoDaddy boring green NASCAR livery. But then again, I'm not going to say too much about NASCAR.
Yeah, I mean, you can only make a NASCAR look so pretty, so...
Yeah, that's a good point. What else? Jess, is there anything you would like to discuss? Or Matt?
I mean, I think we kind of covered everything. I honestly think, besides testing, that the Danica news was the biggest this week. Like I said, I don't think it was a shocker to really, anyone that she came out and said it before it was supposed to be said. Especially because she's getting, or has been getting, up until this point, a lot of flack for announcing the Danica double and then not actually having anything put together. So I think that she's kind of trying to, be like, oh yeah, well, look at me now, kind of thing. So, and we all know why Ed signed her. I mean, it's not rocket science here. That GoDaddy money is going to go a long way for his team. So I mean, I think it's the best she could have hoped for, honestly.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% right there. And before we get to our pit lane pitfalls. One thing I did find kind of funny that came out this weekend after the windscreen test, that the FIA Formula 1 and Formula 2 and Formula E governing sponsor is working very closely with IndyCar on the windscreen, which is the same windscreen that the FIA said no to and adopted the silly-looking halo 6 or 8 or 10
halo.
months ago.
Did you see Williams' livery today? I think it looks... I mean, I don't know if the designer fell asleep when he got to the second half of the car, but the bottom half of the car is like that carbon fiber black. And I'm not entirely sure why they just stopped with that martini white looking color that they use. And then just the halo. It's like I was trying to think of something it reminds me of, and because the halo, it just draws your eyes to it, and you just go, what is that? And so I was thinking of the actor Steve Buscemi. You look at him, and then you look at his eyes, and you go, "Ooh, what's with his eyes?" But you don't like notice anything other than his face. So you look at that car, you don't look at the rest of the car. You just look at the halo, and you go, "What is that?"
Well, that's all the drivers are going to be looking at too. Those poor guys. I can't even imagine having to try to look around that. I mean, you'd be cross-eyed.
That's what I'm most curious about. Is all right. We can all pretty much agree. I think even probably most F1 fans, not going to say all F1 fans, that it's a pretty, it's not good. But you look at the in-car view with the halo, how are you supposed to, as a driver, see things that are happening very quickly with, what's really an obstruction in the way? That's what I really don't understand, and which makes this article about them working closely with IndyCar on the windscreen even funnier. Is, are they starting to admit we're not really even sold on this halo?
Especially since F1 tends to / does a lot look down on IndyCar, not favorably. So I'm all for. I guess I can look past it because at the end of the day, it is about safety, and so if we can help them kind of get to the point where we make things safer, that's to me it's fine. So. I'm trying not to pass it off as usual F1 looking down on IndyCar, but yeah, if we can help them make things safer, I think that's the best for everybody. That's kind of the bigger picture.
Yeah, no, I agree there. And listen, before we turn it over to the pitfalls, I'll let Matt finish off a thought.
Yeah, I saw an article this week, followed by a tweet, in my opinion, about the tracks of Auto Club Speedway, better known as Fontana, and Las Vegas, and I don't know if there was any others listed in there, but they were in talks with IndyCar about maybe figuring out a right date to bring racing back to those tracks that we used to race at, and I think it's long overdue. I think Fontana was a fantastic race. Obviously, the 2015 race was a mix of incredibly dangerous yet thrilling, and the only race outside of the Indy 500 as far as an individual race to ever carry so much buzz and so much hype for the following weeks after the race. That 2015 race was just epic, but it was in a very poor scheduled slot. They couldn't do the night race anymore because by the time the race started, it was already 10 p.m. on the East Coast, and then they couldn't do it at 2 p.m. in the afternoon California time because the fans were just getting absolutely scorched. And then Vegas, I think obviously 2011 was absolutely terrible. Someone within IndyCar got it horribly wrong as far as the aero package that was there. I think if you take what IndyCar has now, some of the lower downforce setups, and bring it there, I think we may be able to put on a great show at Vegas. If we do the proper testing, which I know if Jay Frye is at the head, we know it's going to be done well. You'll send 4 or 5 cars there and run them in a pack and see how it goes. So I think it's about time we sort of called a ceasefire on this war we have on the fast banked ovals, and we really try to have a concerted effort to get back to tracks like Vegas, to Fontana, to Kentucky, and see if we can't get them working again.
Jess, I'll let you step in before I give my thoughts.
Fontana, I would love to see again. Love high-speed ovals, so, Chicagoland, Kentucky would be great. I do have one issue with Vegas, and this is like a personal thing. I will not ever go back there. And I think that there are a lot of people who kind of feel the same way just because of what happened in 2011. And so I think it would be very difficult to get enough people who wanted to go other than for the party in Vegas. So I don't know. I think it would be a tough sell. I'm not saying I wouldn't watch it on TV, but I think it would be definitely a tough sell for a lot of fans because there's just a lot of bad memories there.
Yeah, and I get your point, but I don't know. I'm just wondering, was it just because of the scale of the wreck and the fact that, it was Dan Weldon? Because we've seen other either Indianapolis 500, we've seen a lot of fatalities there. Greg Moore died at Fontana, and people still showed up the next year. I wonder why Vegas sticks out as just a scarring memory.
I think it's because it was Dan Weldon, and he was the epitome of IndyCar at the time, and so it was just
right. And I'm not trying to criticize you. I'm just saying, there's a lot of people who feel like you. With the first NASCAR race after the 2011 IndyCar race at Vegas, everybody was watching the race, and they're like, "Ooh, this brings terrible memories back. I don't want to watch this." And so, you may be right. People may never want to go back. I just wonder why Vegas differs from tracks where other fatalities have happened at. Because, Justin Wilson died at Pocono.
I think it's different now, too, than it was, even 15 years ago or whatever, because it's so in your face now. You can't get away from it. So, instead of seeing the accident one time, you had to see it 500 times. Every time you opened up social media or turn on the TV or whatever.
Which is a shame.
It was kind of just shoved in your face over and over and over again. So
especially on TV.
I think that kind of had something to do with it, because it's you can't just move on and kind of put it in the back of your mind.
And not to say, obviously Justin Wilson's crash was tragic, but the next race was 2 weeks after that, and so it was kind of a healing moment to get to Sonoma and pay tribute to Justin and then race the race, whereas Vegas, we had 6 months to think about it until we did anything IndyCar related. So yeah, I definitely see your point.
And that was all you heard about. Nobody talked about anything else on the off season. It was just, what are we going to do without Dan? So I think that had a lot to do with it, honestly. I think there was just, it was kind of the perfect storm in many, many ways, with the accident itself, and then with the social media aspect and the constant on TV. And yes, it was the end of the season, so nobody kind of got to talk about anything else for, like you said, about 6 months. So it just kind of, I think it just really stuck with people.
Yeah, I'm not going to continue and repeat the same things you guys just said, but Fontana, I would love to see back if they can find, maybe a good time slot. I know, especially being on the East Coast, that race ending at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning was very tough to stay up at. And Vegas, I think the off season and combined with, just the scale of the crash was tough for people to get over. But I am not completely against going, back to Vegas for a race. And I can't even think about Vegas right now because I just spent a week there, but I would love to go back again for an IndyCar race. I definitely, if they put on a race there, and I think Matt hit the most important point. If they even get to the point where they decide, all right, let's explore this, just like the windscreen, I'm sure there will be plenty of testing and maybe retesting and sort of the windscreen where maybe they go there a couple times in the off weeks that they have during the season to check it out. And maybe each test you add a couple more cars to see how it goes. But I'm not against that one, and I think that's it's a good point made by both of you guys about Vegas. But wrapping it up, let's end it with the pit lane pitfall of the week. I will. Matt, you're the guest, so go ahead.
Well, again, before I get my pitfall, I do want to thank you guys for having me on. It's a huge honor, and to come back a second time, this is such a fun experience for me, so I really appreciate you guys having me on. My pit lane pitfall, which I love doing, Gives me a chance to sort of vent about something. My pitfall for the week is Bruce Martin, and I think he's affiliated with a couple of media outlets, but this particular one, an article he wrote on Auto Week. The original headline for a testing recap for Phoenix was Indy cars may produce less passing than anticipated. Now, the quotes he's referring to are the quotes from Friday night, the first day of the tests, where drivers were concerned that the tire degradation and the aero package that drivers hadn't figured out, downforce levels, it wasn't going to not create as much passing because it was basically going to be the same as the last year's with little to no passing, plus the draft wasn't as big as they thought they were. But then in the article, first of all, I didn't see this until this morning when my buddy pointed it out to me, but it's a picture of Will Power, and it says, defending Verizon IndyCar Series champion Joseph Newgarden tests the Chevrolet-powered IndyCar. I mean, we're talking about simple car identification. I mean, if you're a professional, you should know that the number 12 gray Verizon car is Will Power. It's really not a secret as to who drives that car. So there's problem one. And then problem two is the headline. The article is not supported by a single fact stating that there's not going to be any passing. It has a couple quotes from Jay Frye saying the test went great. It has a couple quotes from other drivers saying, we figured it out. A couple other things here stating just kind of general test result, but there's not one negative quote in here saying there was any ideas or notions stating that the race is going to be bad. And then to kind of generalize all races as saying the new IndyCar is not going to produce as much passing. How do you know an oval test is going to translate into what it's going to do on a street or road course or a high-speed oval like Indy? You can't make that generalization just from one night of testing. So I was pretty disappointed in that, and then they later did change the headline to New IndyCar passes first open test at Phoenix. So they must have gotten the cue from some of the negative feedback from people on Twitter stating, well, what the heck are you guys doing? But so my pitfall is going to be Bruce Martin in a very shoddy article.
I can't even argue that one. I'll turn it over to you, Jess.
Okay. I have to agree with the Bruce Martin thing. That's kind of, ridiculous. I'm going to go, though, with, and it's something that I kind of mentioned earlier, I gotta knock the fans a little here. The people who, preach IndyCar to everyone and whatnot. And don't get me wrong, I love you all, so don't get me wrong on that. But the whole being kind of shocked and whatever about Lace and his, we'll call them incidents in testing and posting, about why I don't understand why Foyt would sign him and everything else. I think that going into this, everybody knew, so I can't imagine that it would really be a shock. So why are we going to rehash this topic a million times and basically try to call Foyt out when everybody knows why Foyt did it in the first place? Foyt's got to pay for Tony Kanaan, and he's getting TK's knowledge and experience to help the poor kid. We're going to say hopefully help him. I don't know. We can't, predict the future, but I'm going to say hopefully help him get better. And I think he's looking long term with this deal. So I don't know. I just get frustrated when everybody acts shocked about things that everybody sees coming, I guess.
Yeah, that's such a good point, and if you guys don't mind, I kind of have two pit lane pitfalls. I couldn't really choose one, and I'm just going to go with both, and one of them is kind of echoing Jess's point, so I'll touch on it real briefly.
They're not going to make me cry, are they?
No, none of them will make you. No, none of them will make you cry. At least I hope not. If they do, we'll discuss that. Maybe we'll make fun of you in the next episode when you're not on. The fans that are shocked about Danica Patrick still. A lot of comments after her announcement was, confirmed by Ed Carpenter, were, why did you sign her? I even saw one comment that made me laugh that said, I am going to throw away my Ed Carpenter racing merchandise and dump all my Fuzzy's vodka down the drain. First off, whoever that is, please don't get rid of your vodka. There are 3 people listening that will gladly take your vodka.
Here, bring it here.
Yes. Second, that same comment mentioned, why are you sponsoring Danica? Ed Carpenter is not sponsoring Danica. GoDaddy is sponsoring Danica. Ed Carpenter, similar to AJ Foyt, needs that money. Or, maybe that money gets him, further down the line in 2019. You never know how far that money can go that GoDaddy is giving, and the exposure that Ed Carpenter Racing is going to get from just being associated with Danica for a few weeks in May. But really the pit lane pitfall is Mr. Will Buxton with a silly comment. I think it was just a couple hours ago when he was discussing F1 and live streaming of testing, but it kind of just brought me back to the whole IndyCar and live streaming of testing. Is he said, why would anybody want to watch just a live stream of test? Maybe a recap, sure, but not the whole test. That sounds boring. Now I'm paraphrasing and summing it up because I don't have it in front of me right now, but that's I don't know if Will watched the Fernando Alonso live stream last year, but there was at one point a couple 100,000 people live and a couple million people total who tuned in at one point or another. And from what I can gather, the Phoenix Open test last year drew great numbers online, and the Phoenix test this year completely filled up my Twitter with car liveries and thoughts about the test and videos of the test and where they were watching the test, whether it be at work or like Matt or me on an airplane or wherever you happen to be and watching the test. It's part of the new wave of how we're going to be watching racing, and it's live streaming. And if people want to watch a live streaming of a test, especially with how long these off seasons are, more so in IndyCar than F1, I think is can only help the sport.
Yeah, to comment on both of yours, the first one, the guy who's going to threaten to throw away his shirt and his party foul of throwing away vodka, it's kind of comical because the Ed Carpenter and Fuzzies have already won. He's already gone out and bought this stuff, so their sponsorship has already worked. So for him to kind of throw it away, it's kind of just a joke on him. The second part is I'm not trying to project my flaws onto someone because I can be sort of the same way in that I'm a stubborn Italian Irishman who tends to have strong opinions and then likes to back them up. But Will Buxton has this air of snootiness around him where if you don't believe in his opinions, then you just are not on his level, and it drives me nuts at times. And this is just another incident where just because he believes that live streaming of practice isn't the way to go, if you don't believe that, then you're wrong, and your opinion is invalidated. So I think your pitfalls are spot on.
Cool. And Jess and Matt, unless you have anything else, Jess, go ahead and sign us off.
Matt, you got anything?
No, I can go get my car ready if you need to find my lug nuts.
All right, well, I just want everybody to remember, keep your lug nuts tight.